All right, this is the 5th video in the sequence. I'm now getting ready to join the 2 pieces that I hollowed out so that we can have a full sculpture. So my next job with this here is to just add in some slip and score these areas. I'm just gonna finish hollowing or smoothing out the inside real quick, and I'm making sure that I don't have any loose crumbles on the inside. I'm not interested in making this into a rattle, although I could see why somebody might want to. And now you have a quick peek on the inside. Doesn't look really pretty in there or anything of that sort, but nobody's gonna see it. All right, and now I'm just gonna make sure I have the inside of this one smoothed out. And now I'm ready to use my scoring tool. And I'm gonna go ahead and rough up the surface of both areas that are gonna be joined. And I'm gonna grab some of my slip that I've made and add that on to both pieces. Okay, now I'm ready to take both these pieces that I've added slip to, and I'm gonna join them together. I made sure my slip was a little bit more runny today, mainly because I didn't want a lot of thickness, but wanted to make sure that, that it was gonna stick together really well. Now you're gonna see me just taking my hands and I'm just gonna smooth over that edge. This is exactly why you didn't wanna do any fine detail before you hollowed out your sculpture. All of that detail would have been, all that hard work would have gone away real quickly. So now I'm gonna spend some time getting rid of that seam where you can see where those 2 pieces were joined together. And the glory of this whole thing is that you are using your hands primarily for almost everything while shaping this sculpture. This is called hand building, and definitely one of my favorite techniques when working with clay. So every time I go around, I'm just smoothing over that seam. You can also kind of push it together a little bit more. Another tool to have handy that I seem to have lost on my table here is your blending tool. Here it is. So I'm gonna use a blending tool, and that's also gonna help me fill that little seam there. And I'm gonna drag the clay from the top to the bottom and clean that off real quick. If it has any hard pieces of clay, it's gonna indent your clay, so I'm just gonna clean that off real quick. And I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure on here, just a little. And I'm just pulling the clay from one piece to the next. Going all the way around. So I guess you could say one of the flaws that come with this is people that maybe did not spend enough time making sure to smooth over that seam. So there's also a little bit of a dent. If you look at it right now, not only do I have a seam, but it could also appear as like a little indentation. So it does take some time to really kind of go over this and really, you know, spend time making sure to smooth it out. Smooth that surface. And because I added more of a wet slip, it is a lot more sticky right now than it has been. It's not a problem. The more I touch it, the more it's going to dry it out. Okay, every time I go around, I'm looking at that seam and I am making sure that I smooth that out. I'm also being very careful that I'm not putting too much pressure. If you put too much pressure on your sculpture, you're going to push the clay body in, and then you're going to need to open it back up to fix it. Okay, so you have to be real mindful that you are working with something that needs to be handled with care. So too much pressure would definitely be a bad thing. It would create, I guess you could say, a hole or a really big dent. Much of what I do when I'm working with clay seems to be repetitive behavior, so I'm keep repeating myself, smooth the surface, smooth it out. You don't start doing any kind of details, carving, nothing until that seam is completely gone. And I can still see it every time I turn it. So there's that seam right there. I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but that's the seam that I'm gonna make disappear. So often I will pull clay from the bottom or the top of the sculpture, and I keep going over that area again and again. Back and forth from the bottom towards the top, from the top towards the bottom, until you get that seam to go away. I have a couple dry crumbles on there. This is another reason why we clean off our work surface, because you don't want any dry crumbles getting onto your sculpture. Not that it's a big deal, it's just irritating if nothing else. I could easily spend a good 20 to a half hour, depending on the size of your sculpture, just smoothing over that seam. You do not continue until that seam is completely gone. Again and again, it is a repetitive back and forth of going over that seam until it disappears. If you can still see it, so can everybody else. All right, and the main method of that, even though I'm going to turn off the recorder, and work on it some more, the main method is just that repetitive. I'm going to keep smoothing it until the seam is gone.